So now we're into recycling, and we need a materials recovery facility. And hopefully you will get one. You've got as elegant and as simple, effective recycling operations as you can see. You've got things which are low cost, low capital costs, and the people are doing a great job. When I went to Ravens and P&M, I saw the quality of the materials. I saw the containers with the white plastic bottles and so on, and people are doing a great job. Just with the signs, put it this and this and this. Very, very good, and you're going to get very high quality materials. But what I would recommend is that you consider the following. You keep that existing system and perhaps reward the people that bring in the separated recyclables. But those who don't want to do that complicated separation, you want to see something complicated, go to Kamakatsu in Japan. They ask people to separate into 34 different categories. All right, and they do it. Now, so you have, I would suggest, two streams. One stream is if you separate the recyclables, you get some kind of reward. Don't know what it is, but you can think about that. But the people that bring in the mixed recyclables, they don't get any reward, or they even may have to pay for it. So if you don't want to, all you have to do is to separate the recyclables from the junk, from the organics and stuff, and the stuff which is destined for the landfill. And you bring that there, and that will feed into a materials recovery facility with the conveyor belts and the paid workers, some machinery. As you probably know, you can separate cans with magnets. You can separate aluminum cans from steel cans with eddy currents. You can separate plastics. So a lot now can be done mechanically plus workers in facilities like this. And this is the kind of stuff that you will see. You will see that in Ravens and P&M. And these are destined to end up possibly in India or China. But one of the things I was thinking, flying here through hour after hour, mountain after mountain, I couldn't see a house anywhere, from Vancouver to here, is how on earth are they going to recycle in such a remote place? And I came up here and found you can do it. You can do it by barge on the river to Vancouver and then onwards to where they are desperate for these materials. And anybody that burns that stuff needs a head examining, because you're assuming for the next 25 years that nothing's going to change, and that people in India and China and other countries, even ourselves, are going to want this material. And you're going to look pretty stupid if you're committed to burning it. If you've built an incinerator, you're trapped for 25 years. To pay for that incinerator, it's got to produce electricity. You've got to keep running it. And the finances are based upon the tipping fee, which will be agreed, and a contract will be signed between communities and the company, Yukon Energy, to supply so much waste over so many years at so much a ton. If you don't supply it, you pay for it anyway. These are called put or pay agreements. So what happens then, all of a sudden, if the fuel that you're burning for 2 penny worth of energy is the market price is going up and up and up? What happens then? Well, you're trapped. And you don't want to be in that situation. Okay. So now for the remote communities in the Yukon, yes, this is not so easy. We know the roads are not easy to go. What I suggest there is you do what these people are doing. You're collecting with simple containers, and you stockpile this. You may be in pole barns or something. You stockpile this, and when the road's clear, or when you get enough to fill a truck, then that truck comes to Whitehorse and feeds into your system here. So think of those, that Whitehorse becomes a hub, and these other things become little nodes feeding into that hub. Now, step 5 is reuse, repair, and deconstruction. Deconstruction meaning taking down buildings in the reverse order that they went up, so that you can salvage the materials, which can be very valuable. I think this has a huge role to play in Whitehorse. Now, let me explain the difference between reuse and recycling. Recycling is high volume, low value. Right now, Raven is able to survive financially because they get enough money back on the deposit law, of deposits on these containers, to compensate for the loss of these long shipping distances and so on. So that's another major plus that you have here of having the deposit laws on your containers. You're getting a huge recovery of those because of the economic incentives. That's good. And even better, some of those bottles that you're recovering are reusable and reused locally by the beer company. So that again is excellent. So recycling is high volume, low value, whereas reuse is low volume, high value. This is the Los Angeles Waste Team. The reusable item is about 2% of the total, but the value look is nearly 40% of the total value. So this means there are going to be jobs and businesses that are waiting to happen in Whitehorse if you set up a reuse and repair center. And of course you've got some aspects here already. You've got a lovely reuse second-hand bookstore. That's part of it. You've got Salvation Army. That's also part of it. But we want something bigger than that, something more comprehensive than that. I don't suggest you put the second-hand bookstore out of business or the Salvation out of business, Salvation Army out of business. There are going to be materials which you're going to separate at your citywide reuse and repair center, which will go to the Salvation Army free, and books that will go to the second-hand bookstore, same thing. Okay. So here's an example. This is Urban Ore in Berkeley, California. And the city of Berkeley actually once said Urban Ore is one of Berkeley's treasures. It's been running for 30 years. It was started by this man who's remarkable. This is Dr. Dan Knapp, a PhD in sociology, and his wife, Mary Lou DeVenter. He started this business 30 years ago, scavenging the San Francisco landfill. He literally pulled aluminum and stuff out of the landfill and eventually made a living out of that, and eventually got his own building. And he's been running for 30 years. They are grossing $3 million a year, and they've got 27 full-time, well-paid jobs. In fact, some of his workers have worked for him for over 20 years because they are well-paid, they're well looked after. He's retiring soon, he's going to hand the business over to these workers. And it turns out that these workers' skills, experience is invaluable because they know the difference between a door that's worth $10 and a door that's worth several $100 and throughout the whole thing. In fact, when I was standing there once making a videotape of this operation, somebody brought in a stove which didn't look too grand to me, but within 10 minutes that had been sold for $700 because one of those workers knew that it was valuable. So one end of this reuse business, of course, is antiques. Here are these people. They're coming out with furniture, clothing, etc., etc., etc. And it's like a second-hand shopping mall. And some of them, I'm thinking of Revolve now in Canberra, Australia, is laid out like a typical big furniture store where you have different rooms. You have the bedroom, you have the kitchen, you have the sitting room, and so on. And all the second-hand things are being fitted in to these full decorated displays. Very, very attractive. You want a toilet bowl? Go to Berkeley. You want a door? Go to Berkeley. In fact, Dan Knapp is a specialist in doors. And some of these doors are worth a lot of money. Now, something about housing that you probably know. Typically, a house weathers more on one side than the other. And if you buy a house, which is an old house, then some of the windows on the weathering side are going to rot out. And they're not going to be standard sizes or shapes. And with a reuse and repair center, some of those windows from the good side will end up there, and you can replace it that way rather than getting a carpenter to make the window to the right specifications.